Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion. Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Nathaniel Gillis. If you're looking for enlightening, entertaining, and spooky entertainment for the Halloween season, check out my films. Doors of Perception is on Amazon Prime. Occult Louisiana is on Tubi, Roku Channel, Apple, and more. We are booking guests for December. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Be sure to visit our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. It's the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. We feature some of your favorite podcasts and content creators. Today I want to welcome back to the show Nathaniel Gillis. He is a demonologist and author. After living in a haunted house, he spent 20 years researching what it was he encountered. He has sought to redefine the nature of haunting phenomena, ghosts, and high strangeness. Nathaniel, welcome back. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing very well, sir. Thank you for having me back on. It's always a good time with you. You were one of the OGs back in the day that had me on their show, and since then, it's been a good time.
Right
But
on.
I'm thankful, man. Thanks for having me back on.
Yes, always enjoy our discussions. And today we're going to once again take an extremely deep dive into your research, and it is deep. You've been studying the nature of paranormal high strangeness, ufology, and the profound and even concerning connections that thread this phenomena together with human consciousness. You've also been working with other researchers in these various fields to try and find more answers. It seems that there is only more questions at this point, but like I heard you say, better questions. I like that. There's a lot to
Yeah.
discuss with this, but before we do, it's been a little while since you've been on. Remind the audience a little bit about yourself and let them know how they can find out more.
So, my name is Nathaniel Gillis, as you guys have deduced. I am a researcher and experiencer. I have created a field called necronetics, and that field is centered around incubi cases throughout history, hybridism, and the self-replication of a species among us. I do believe, my central thesis, I guess, here is that there is a species that exists within this planet, on this planet, that is using our species to self-replicate its own. It's parasitic, and it does seem to be performing some kind of sorcery or ritual magic. And much of that form of hybridism has been hijacked, recontextualized, removed from its source by those within ufology. And so, since I came to that conclusion, it was uncomfortable. It wasn't like I woke up one day and said, Nathaniel, you want to be alienated? Do right? Yeah, it's a good career move, Nathaniel. Start coming up with some wild theories. No, it happened because, in history, people have been found with secretions and sigils on their bodies, mainly women. And demonology did not know what to do with that question. Is that a practitioner of the occult, or is it a demon? If it is a demon is incorporeal, even if we lean on the Nephilim literature, being the disembodied spirit. It's incorporeal. It has no secretions. It cannot inseminate a woman to create a fetus. So that's where I realized, maybe we're dealing with something that has yet been quantified in the field, especially within demonology. And then that led me into looking at hybridism through the lens of, again, UFO abduction phenomena. And then I came to another conclusion, and that was that, the sigils that were found on experiencers and incubi victims were also being found on UFO abductees. That's a problem for me. And it's not just me that's coming up with this, right? It's not just my cases that are saying this. There are people that I'm working with now that have also encountered that aspect of the phenomena. And we do believe, these are not the results or remnants of some kind of medical experiment. Dr. Carla Turner Long hypothesized that itself was a fallacy given to us to propagandize us on the part of the phenomenon. I mean, if the same experiment's being done, the same symbols are being done for 1,000 years, maybe these intelligences aren't that intelligent after all. Or, and this is something I'm leaning towards, and others are, in fact, or that's a screen memory. And they're trying to create a reason, right, for us to believe, that's a medical experiment. No. So, that's where I'm at right now in the field and in my research. But I do believe, at least at this point in my career, that there is a species that has not yet been characterized in the field. And it would it would kind of be more along the lines of a species of practitioners that blend the line between the demonic. So that's why I believe that people have confused these entities for a long, long, long time.
Right on. Well, I'd love to get into some of the recent work that you've done with other researchers in various fields to try and come up with answers. What have you been working on recently?
So we have been looking at symbols and artifacts left on the skin of experiencers. These seem to be something supernatural. Even in the Middle Ages, demonology, when sigils were on the skin of experiencers, they would be hidden from the experiencer. In fact, Sinister Mino had cases where they were found underneath the person's eyelids.
Wow.
The entity had carved. And I'm still stuck with this, and I'm probably going to have to die on this hill. But sigilization was usually designed on the part of the practitioner to either conjure or to seal an entity within the body of another individual. Or if you get to Austin Osman Spar, the 3 stages of sigilization, which he coined the term for, God. And he said that, there are 3 stages to it, where the body will absorb the sigil, it will activate the sigil, then it will expel the sigil. And then that will fulfill the ritual to successful completion. And so whatever we're dealing with does seem to be playing within those boundaries, because a lot of these carvings and symbols we're finding are, most of the time, they start from underneath the skin and they slowly move to the surface. And then by the time we capture them in photographic evidence, we see them as burns. And then some of them have been tested to be underneath the skin. So if I were, for that matter, a ufologist going in to investigate this stuff, and we saw burns, we would deduce, right? Okay, yeah, that's some kind of medical experiment, or that's just a burn on your body, when in fact, a lot of these are starting from underneath the skin. And so we have a collection of these symbols and images. One of them is an actual hand underneath the skin of an individual. It actually was tested with light. It's underneath the skin. So whatever we're dealing with, again, it blurs the line between occultist and the demonic, because it's like, okay, if it is an occultist, how can that be happening? How can occultists pull somebody out of their body,
Right.
place them back into it, and then suddenly you start to see symbols from underneath the surface of the skin? So it it bugs my mind, because whatever we're dealing with, again, there's something else out there. And it does seem to be following the sigilization method.
How often are these sigils associated with any type of phenomena or paranormal activity that you've had documented?
This is this stuff is very rare, though. It's very rare, at least to our knowledge. I can tell you this, and it gets back to one of Dr. Carla Turner's points that she loved to make was, okay, because somebody asked her, how often are people abducted? And she was like, well, we don't know, because the only reason we know of abduction is because people remember them.
Right.
If we're dealing with the phenomenon, right, that has the ability to remove memories or to even implant a screen memory, then we could have 1 million abductees walking around at any one time. And the only reason we know it's taking place is because it's the black cat in the matrix. There's a glitch. The phenomenon really fails to imprint and implant that screen memory. That individual goes home realizing there was something very bad that happened to me. And they go and tell their story. And then researchers like myself come back around and say, we have a problem. But to your question, we have cases where people didn't even know they had them, my friend. Where you take a black light and place it over their arm, and the symbols are on their arm. And this points to a very uncomfortable nuance within the research, and it's a reference again to Michael Heiser, and the late John Mack, which both of them are unfortunately gone from us. But John Mack said that, number one, this trauma is real. They're not making this up. Whatever has happened to them has basically shocked them to a place of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so, and Heiser and Mack both agreed that some of the symptoms that they discovered on these experiencers mirror those found on victims of satanic ritual abuse, to where they are performed upon. Now, I don't take pleasure in this, right? I don't like, Nathaniel Gillis, he's projecting his worldview. No, I'm not. This is not my worldview, by the way, right? My worldview isn't the fact that beings can peel you out of your own body, implant their own signatures on you, and then put you back in. That's nowhere in demonology, by the way.
I've heard you discuss some very physical aspects of this phenomenon recently that could point to very strange implications about the nature of our reality in general. But speaking of Apports, tell us about this phenomena and some of the research you've done into it.
Oh, man. So I'm being mentored, and my good friend as well, he's not just my mentor, but he's my dear friend, is Steve Mira. And when I got into this field, I knew I needed a mentor, right? I knew I was not going to be successful, not in my career, of course, but like in my research, unless I had somebody that had the scientific method to add to some of the research I was doing. So I didn't want to just be limited to my cases, my experiences, and the literature I've read. So I became friends with Steve Mira. They flew me out to England. I lectured alongside of them. Absolutely incredible researchers. Steve Mira, Dr. Barry Fitzgerald, Paul Sinclair, the Kinsella twins, Mark Awley. Amazing. And as I started coming out with my theories, they were not only embraced, but they were confirmed with raw data. Like the scientific method proves a lot of what we know we're seeing, at least in the field, to where you have a case study where somebody says, all right, I was interfacing with an entity, and next thing I know, I'm being induced into some kind of coma or some kind of stupor, and all of my defenses are down. Even the whistleblower Mike Batista recently came out and said that, where he's looking at a UAP in the sky, and it's going through different archetypes, different images in front of him, and it's trying to settle on a shape that it wants to hold, which is something we might touch on later on. But he said that he realized that in any other context, he would be flipping out and he would be running away. Like, why am I captivated by this phenomenon? All of my defenses are down. And so we knew that pathology was present. It was pervasively present throughout all of the case studies. And then so when I brought that to Stephen Barry's attention, they're like, oh, yeah, we know. And so they started taking me through their own research, where like at one time they had an individual that was performing the CE5 protocol. They had taken a brainwave monitoring unit and placed it on this person's head. We're going to see what happens when the phenomenon manifests. And so sure enough, at the successful completion of the protocol, the phenomenon manifests above their heads. The experience just watching the light phenomena, right? Okay, this is incredible. This is amazing. They were watching the brainwave activity. And within 20 seconds, I think it was, the phenomenon had induced that individual into theta brainwave activity, where trances are taking place, the dreamlike states taking place, which, by the way, we've heard about even as far back into demonology. So whatever we're dealing with, number one, it seems to be the same intelligence. It's employing the same mechanisms. And then even once you get into demonology, again, we get into some of the darkest, most malevolent possession cases where the phenomenon simply does not want to dispossess that individual. What it would do is that individual would regurgitate objects, apports from their bodies. Nails. It's very small objects that could fit right into the cavity and come out. And the phenomenon, like, again, this individual did not eat nails, right? They did not ingest any of these objects, but the phenomenon had supernaturally apported them into the body of the demoniac, and now they're regurgitating them. Now, Father Gabriel Amorth, Malachi Martin, Adam Bly will all testify to the fact that these objects are haunted. Quote, haunted. There is a presence about them. They have, and I think it was Gabriel Amorth was even asked about them. He said, yes, we take them, we place them in a safe space so that the public cannot come in contact with them. So moving right along, we know that there is a mechanism employed on the part of the phenomenon. When it is being displaced and it doesn't want to, it will apport something into this reality through the mortal portal of a human being. And then it will connect itself to that object. That's in demonology.
Wow. Isn't there also cases where these objects will manifest during hauntings?
Yes, absolutely. And this is where Stephen Barry's research comes back into play, because they're incredible, where in poltergeist activity cases and other malevolent hauntings, the phenomenon would just materialize an object out of thin air. Not, okay, again, demonology says, well, they're just manipulating your perception of it. No, I wish it was as simple as that, right? I wish I could just close my eyes and look away. You know what I mean, brother? Yeah. That's not what we're dealing with, at least that model. It's so we have, again, is an intelligence that could just materialize objects out of nowhere. Boop. And these aren't physiological constructs either. It's real. It is something that is in our environment, introduced into it, perhaps by something outside of the construct. And so to go through this kind of series, I guess, stages of research by Barry and Steve, where they would go into a house and they said, okay, we know the phenomenon does not waste time. It does not waste its own energy. And that oftentimes these apports to where, again, the phenomenon will take objects from a house, and sometimes it will replace them with objects that are identical to what it removed. So that's a major problem.
Wow.
That's a major problem. And so what they started realizing is like for instance, I'll go through the stages here. They had one case where the phenomenon had apported an object. And so at first blush, they're like, okay, that's very strange. We've heard about this. We've had other cases like this. But now we're starting to really pay attention to the pathology. Why is the phenomenon performing this feat? What's actually going on? And so then they had another case. And again, they kind of pile up on each other till they realize what's going on. It's fascinating. Second case, I believe it was a husband and a wife are arguing. And people always say, Nathaniel, you always tell this story. Well, I was asked this time, so right. They'll get me. They'll be like, Nathaniel. Anyways, brother, it is pretty funny. Anyways, husband and a wife are arguing, and in a fit of rage, the husband takes a figurine that he sees on a table. It's moving. It's moving. So he's like, what the heck is this? And he grabs it, fit of rage, walks out the front door, throws it, shatters it to a million pieces. Comes back into the house. 2 minutes later, he looks back down. The figurine is put together right back where he found it.
Shit.
Yeah, that's what are we dealing with here? And so then Steve had a case where a family had, I think, three or four different, not different, I always say that, three or four coffee mugs. They were identical to each other. They were purchased in the same batch from maybe like a Costco or something. And identical, the same manufacturer, the same paint, everything was uniformal. Well, one of the coffee mugs goes missing, and they're searching for it for like a month or two, can't find it anywhere. And then one day it shows back up in the kitchen, right in front of them. They would have never missed it. And so Steve, he's like, well, there's something wrong with this picture. We know the phenomenon's up to something. We just don't know what yet. And so he sends that particular specimen off to a laboratory. They perform their tests and come back and say that there is, compared rather to the other mugs it came with, this coffee mug had a different isotopic ratio than the others. So it was either changed on the way from dematerialization to materialization, or it's a completely different coffee mug than that family purchased with the group. What?
That's crazy.
Well, then I'll kind of finish and summarize their theory here, which it's fascinating, and then I'll kind of go into the implications for the construct in our species. That's when they realized that the phenomenon was implanting things within our environment, and that we may or may not even know exist.
That's absolutely insane.
So then they take, in an experiment, they take one of the apports away. And this is another case study of theirs where it kind of all coalesced, tied the theory into a bow, and it's like, dear God, help us. Anyways, one of their last cases with the apports was an event where the family noticed something that just showed up. It's not ours. Where'd that come from? I didn't buy it. I didn't purchase it. So then Stephen Barry decided to run an experiment. They'd remove the object from the home, right? Just like the priests do. Get it out of the environment, take it to a safe storage space, and the next day they get a phone call from the family. They're ecstatic. Thank you guys so much. You're the best researchers we've ever had in the house. Nobody's been able to ever stop the phenomenon. He's like, what's going on? Well, we no longer see ghosts and apparitions, no more balls of light, no more poltergeist activity. What did you guys do? And Barry and Steve look at each other and kind of grin. And they said, well, we haven't really done much of anything, actually. We just removed the object from the home. And then we replaced the object and put it back in the home. Within about 6 or 7 hours, the phenomenon had triangulated its location, reconnected to the anchor.
Wow.
And now it's manifesting in the house again. So what does that mean? The phenomenon employs a mechanism, both in demonology and I guess now in parapsychology, right? Where when you are trying to get rid of the phenomenon, it doesn't want to leave. It will apport an object within our construct, anchor itself to it. And now, and this gets back into necronetics, it will further its own existence by virtue of self-replication. That's necronetics. And so that's what they realized. But it's no different again with Gabriel Amorth and these exorcists, wherein they say, hey guys, we know whatever this intelligence is, it's anchored itself to these objects. That was the whole point rather, of the apport, is so that it doesn't have to leave. It will manifest something and we'll think it's just an object. It's blending in to our reality. It's
Wow.
something that seems to belong here, but it's not from here. It's from somewhere outside of the construct. Now, this gets back into Richard Bandrick's research. He's a CEO of an aerospace company now. But according to his testimony, he said 40 years ago he was contracting with the federal government to go out to gifting fields.
Yes, I was about to ask you about that.
Yeah, brother. And he's picking up these metamaterials. He's holding it in his hand. And there were two characteristics that I want to highlight here. Number one, if that metamaterial was not designed for you, it would dissolve and devolve into some kind of dust or powder. But number two, he said something that really caught my eye and it disturbs me. He said, but wherever this metamaterial was, it blended in with its environment. If it
Hmm.
was in grass, it looked like grass. So, what we do have here is a phenomenon that is hiding in plain sight. And again, like a glitch in the matrix, the black cat repeats itself. We, as experiencers and researchers, come along and say, wait a minute, right? Why is this phenomenon replacing portions of reality?
Hmm.
And
Let's
how
get
many times has that taken place? Yeah.
Yeah, man. Let's get deeper into the ufology connections.
Yeah.
There are high level groups and individuals that are
Hmm.
associated with the military industrial complex, three-letter agencies that are extremely interested in this stuff. They have
Yeah.
people going out to Skinwalker Ranch, throwing my buddy Ryan Burns tons of money just to do experimentation and even rituals out there. And if it's
Really?
aliens that we are talking about out there, why are they doing
They know it's not
rituals?
aliens. They
Right?
know it's
Yes,
not
that's what I wanted to
aliens.
get into is at the higher levels. They do
They
know
don't.
something. They may not know it all, but they know that it's not little green men coming on tin
No.
cans to stick things in our butts.
No, 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 it's not. You know, you're right. And it's an unfortunate position that we're in because whatever they are, it's not being disclosed. People are like, well, we're getting disclosure. No, we're not. No, we're not. No, we're not. You know, it's like, okay. I mean, even some of the, I don't know, I won't go there. But yeah, I don't believe they're demons, or at least that I don't believe they're aliens, I should say. Uh, the model that makes the most sense would be demon versus angel. If you get back to Diana Pasuka's research, she had an interview, I think it was with Sean Ryan, where she said that these whistleblowers we are seeing in front of Congress aren't the real whistleblowers.
Mm.
What? She's like, yeah. She's like, yeah. The real whistleblowers behind the scenes, those that have actually confided in her, are convinced, not just through personal experience, but through the scientific method, mind you, that what we're dealing with should be classified, or at least the closer model would be something like the demon versus angel hypothesis. And that disturbs me. You know, I've had conversations even recently where what people are trying to push as extraterrestrial contact in the CE5 movement is also being performed by Ryan Bledsoe. But Ryan Bledsoe says that we're praying to these orbs.
Mm.
I didn't make that up.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
tweet he sent out. We're
right.
praying to them. So we're being lied to. We're being lied to, my friend. You know, when you have, again, you have people within the federal government that say, okay, we're we're creating this frequency in order to attract them. Okay. It's interesting. And it has nothing, it's all secular, right? It has nothing to do with anything religious. And anybody that would suggest it does, right? They're projecting their own worldview. Okay. Because the number one abductee in the world, who's actively been researched by both the Vatican and our government, they believe they're praying to these orbs.
Yeah.
What's going on here? And so, again, you have this group of experiencers who are saying, this is what I'm doing. And then you have the other group who are like, That can't be what you're doing because we can't have that out. We've got to decontextualize this, and then they'll frame it like, well, what you have to do is communicate them with your intentions, and you got to meditate. You've got to be thankful. You've got to be humble in your approach. You are not in control of these. Okay, that's called prayer, guys. That's called prayer. And I get, again, people like to make this really complicated. It's not. Professor Abraham Joshua Heschel, the rabbi, when he was at the Jewish Theological Seminary, again, at JTS, you can't pray unless you're literate. It's not right. It's not like evangelicalism where I'm just going to make something up. It wasn't, at least. And then Professor Heschel had a visit from a young Jewish student, and he's like, listen, everybody here, professor, they're literate. They know how to pray in Hebrew. I don't know anything about this. My parents just paid my way. I've got a full ride here. I've got to learn all this, and I don't even know how to pray. And so Heschel is fascinating. He leans back in his chair and he goes, okay, why don't you pray to learn how to pray? Oh, and the guy goes, okay, yeah, okay. So what do you say? Okay, teach me how to pray. And he gets done, asking how to pray, and he goes, okay, that's a prayer. Just really got him. Really, it's fascinating stuff. My point, though, is when people like to suggest that, Nathaniel, listen, there's nothing spiritual going on here. It's not true. That's not true at all. There is something deeply spiritual going on. And I would suggest that there is some form of ritual magic, or at least occultism. I mean, that's not even just a suggestion. Back in the day, the 1940s, our federal government had a conversation with Jack Parsons, the rocket scientist and occultist, and asked him, do you believe that some of the rituals you and Crowley have been performing has opened a door, a portal, for whatever these beings are to manifest? And he admitted, yes, I do. I do believe that. We could have done that, absolutely. Well, when he died in 1952, it was in June. In July of 1952, a UFO outbreak occurred right over Washington. Mm-hmm. And since then, our federal government, or at least factions within our federal government, have been in covenant with whatever these beings are, to the point where they're carving their own sigils and symbols into rockets before they launch them into space.
Right. Yes.
I'm tired of being gaslit. Don't tell me, right? I'm not seeing what I am seeing. And at times it does get frustrating. But at the same time, when we look at the demonic model, people get hung up on the form, right? Oh, well, when it's funny because when people say that, well, the thing of they're demonic, I ask them, what do you mean by demonic? You mean horns and hooves demonic? You mean they're all Pan, the god Pan? No. But are they demonic in function? Do they deceive people? Do they want to be worshipped? Will they give you a miracle in order for you to worship them? What is that? And again, this gets back into biblical antiquity, the ancient model that our ancestors had in their head. They knew that some of these beings, they wanted altars in the middle of groves. These were called space demons, where they would go out into the desert and they would meet a deity, and the deity would say, hey, listen, I want you to do A, B, and C for me, and then in return, I will give you something. And that's really where we are. And the problem is, and this is what I'm hung up on personally, people will say, like I had an email the other day, Nathaniel Gillis, I got to tell you, these are jinn. I said, okay, why are they jinn? Well, jinn are made of smokeless fire. Orbs are made of plasma, and that's fine, that's great. But what we're essentially having are a group of characteristics. And then when we have those characteristics, we think that we can apply a name to them, and that name defines them, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, this individual has 2 arms, 2 eyes, 2 legs. It's Nathaniel Gillis. Okay, that's cool. Or is it a species, right? Or is it something deeper or darker that, again, that our ancestors wrestled with, trying to understand what they are? And so they gave them titles. It's a jinn, it's a demon, right? Aelin, all of us. And I'm to the point now where I do believe some of these characteristics fit into it. But I think that as much as we have to say about what they are, we still are ignorant about what they are. or aren't even, because again, we have a little bit of data that again, it's almost like even the evangelicals that I grew up with, like they'll see Nathaniel, okay, these are demons because they're performing magic. Okay, okay. And they're demons because of A, B, and C, but let's look at that model for a second. You know, people often tell me, Nathaniel, we know they're Nephilim or they're watchers because they're replicating with individuals. I said, okay. But according to the Bible, those entities are chained in darkness. The ones that could replicate with our species, they have the ability, but they don't have the freedom. Mm-hmm. Now, their offspring, that which, again, Christian demonology says are demons, are disembodied spirits. So here we have, right, the freedom, but not the ability to replicate with us.
Right.
So somewhere in between those two, there exists another species. Perhaps maybe these entities are possessing them, and then you'll have the practitioner impregnate, and the entity within takes that fetus as their own avatar. That is a possibility. But I still believe that whatever we're dealing with transcends all known models.
It seems to
And
have,
that is an uncomfortable thing.
It's extremely uncomfortable. It seems to have technological aspects. It seems to be able to adjust to human consciousness, to evolve with our technology, and present itself as whatever it wants to present itself as.
Right.
Talk a little bit about the research you've done into orbs and the implications there.
Oh my God. So it goes back to a conversation I had with a late friend of mine, Dr. Michael Lynch, and we got to talking about orbs, orbology, orb theory. And he had said one time, he's like, Nathaniel, he goes, back when I was doing investigations full time, he said, I went to a haunted house and we had a lot of activity. We were there for about 2 hours and captured a lot of orb footage. And while some orbs are, misidentified, right? They are actually just specks of dust. Yeah. Others are not. How do we know that, Nathaniel? Because they're basketball-sized orbs, right? They're perfectly round, and sometimes you'll even have faces staring at you within them. So anyways, when I was on the phone with Dr. Lynch, he told me about a case where he had recently purchased a laser thermometer. And he's like, man, he goes, I've been itching to use this in the field. He's like, but I never had a reason to. He's like, it was just something I picked up on the fly. It was pretty inexpensive on eBay. And he said, but he's packing up all of his equipment in his car one night after an investigation. And he's looking down in his trunk and he notices the laser thermometer. And he's like, God, this is one of my last investigations of the year. I'm not going to have a chance to use this. I wish I could use this somehow. And out of nowhere comes the orb out of the house. It's moving through the aisle, or the alley, rather. I was going to say aisle, the alley. And he sees that, and finally it becomes stationary enough. And he's like, okay, I'm going to zap it. I'm going to get it. He starts shooting this laser at this ball of light. And he's like, to my astonishment, the light refracted off of it. It hit it, bounced off. And he said that would imply that the object was solid. He's like, the problem is, Nathaniel, immediately after I shot it with the laser, and the laser just bounced off. He said that ball of light went into another house right through the wall. So what are they? Now, in my research, I call these pre-archetypes. What the phenomenon likes to do in many cases is that by the time we consciously understand what we're looking at, even if we don't know its origin, once we place it within our mind and we acknowledge it, the phenomenon has the ability to weaponize the observer effect, to collapse itself into different forms, and more importantly, control the variable to where it can actually turn on the observer effect at will. What are we dealing with, guys? Because that's not just quantum mechanics, guys.
It also
that's
has
something that's
strange
inside it.
Implications when it comes to our free will.
Yes, absolutely. Uh, right. But whatever this would be, if it had the ability to trigger that at will, to where if it doesn't want, right, to be collapsed into that image, it won't.
Hmm.
So it's another indication, another implication that we're dealing with something outside of the construct. That's, oh God. Okay, so getting back to these orbs, it is a fact, number one, that in hauntology and in parapsychology, we have researchers and cases where you'll have people that have set up a camera and then they're looking with their naked eye. And it's exactly what we just talked about a second ago, where once they perceive the phenomenon, like for instance, Lloyd Auerbach and other parapsychologists have seen apparitions with the naked eye. It's an apparition. And then they'll go back to the camera and there is no apparition. There's a ball of light. And so finally, one of them realized that every time they see an apparition with their eyes, the apparition will be here, but the camera will capture an orb directly behind it. And they were proportionate. The distance between the two stayed consistent.
Hmm.
Right?
It's
So
like
it
a
wasn't like this
projection.
was moving, it was a projection.
Mhm.
And so then they were like, okay, that's a little bit strange. And so you get that's Lord Auerbach's research. But even Dr. Barry Taff has had cases like that where once again, this is in the San Pedro haunting with Jackie Hernandez. They had cornered a ball of light, corpuscular ball of light, as he called it. And I think this one was as big as a basketball, massive, massive ball of light. It was self-illuminating, and they had cornered it in a room. And after cornering it, they're interfacing with this intelligence, and it starts to go like this, and then boom. Now they're not staring at a ball of light; they're staring at half of an apparition.
Hmm.
It's a man. He's like, it was a man. You could see it. It's a man, and it's animated now. It's moving and looking at them. And when it did manifest the apparition, all of his assistants in the room with him hit the floor, fainted. Um,
Whoa.
yeah, weird, weird, weird stuff. I mean, as if we're not already being weird with what we're talking about here, guys. But so we know that these balls of light can create physiological constructs, something that would look 3D, 4D in our dimension. We would think not just, okay, that's an apparition, but at times that's a real person. It's not. It's the byproduct of whatever these orbs are. You know, in the amount of I guess the amount of time it takes for these balls of light to become that, it's instantaneous.
Mhm.
And we would have never caught that as researchers in the field unless there was a glitch in the matrix, unless we knew at the same time we're seeing the apparition, we're capturing the orb. And so again, so not just that, but these things can become anthropomorphic to the point where it's not just an image of a man it can project, but they can actually force people against the wall. This is a Dr. Lynch case where the is a former special forces operator is up against the wall and he's saying to Dr. Lynch, something's choking me. I can't breathe. And so they're like, well, we don't see anything. And sure enough, he said, I can feel a man's hand around my neck. Think about this, guys. He felt he felt it. That's one thing. It's another thing to see what they saw, which was a handprint begin to form around the man's neck. So he felt a man's hand, and they saw the handprint. The problem is it was a ball of light. It came right out of his body.
Whoa.
So what are we dealing with here? Chris Bledsoe being in the woods. And again, he testified, hey guys, I was being followed by a man. I could hear him walking and breaking the sticks, crushing the leaves behind me. I turn around, expecting to see a man. It was a ball of light.
Yeah.
Now, whatever we're dealing with here, there seems to be no end to the constructs these intelligences can create.
Hmm.
No end, absolutely no end. You know, I've talked to some researchers here lately, and it's like, okay, if you took the orbs that we're finding in hauntings and just threw them in the sky, what would we call them? We call them UAP. We call them UAPs. And we have cases where that is occurring. And not only that, but I'm going to take this a step further to where people start to really see what I'm saying here. If the phenomenon can start out as a ball of light and create a physiological construct in the middle of a haunted house, why couldn't it do that with the craft in the sky?
Right. 100%.
Let's take it a step further. Take a step further, perhaps. And this gets even crazier. It goes back to a conversation that John Keel was having with an experiencer, and one of these experiencers going, how, like, what's going on here? Are these beings real? Are these craft real? And his response was, yes. There's a caveat. They're only as real for as long as they last. So getting the Keelian paraphysicality of the phenomenon, where it's paraphysical, what do you mean? It can materialize. It will play the part it is supposed to in our environment. You will test it. You will touch it. You can quantify it. You'll capture on radar, right? You'll discover it on sonar. But that could just be a physiological construct on the part of the phenomenon. And at the time of the phenomenon's choosing, it can literally take that out of our environment. It's not moving. It's gone. It's gone. And the problem is, again, that opens up not just the implication of us existing in a construct, but that whatever we're dealing with is not just outside of the room. It's outside of the entire house. Mm-hmm. It's outside of the neighborhood.
But not only that, it has free reign and full access to everything within the house.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, man. So before we get deeper into the possibilities of what this means for the nature of our reality and the deeper implications there, I heard you mention that the phenomenon may have even caused deaths to people who get too close to it.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, if not the phenomenon, our own government.
Right.
Yeah. Well, again, people act like disclosure's right around the corner. And if you take a look at history and you ask yourself, number one, we do know the phenomenon's been here for bare minimum 100 years. And I don't believe that's even true. I mean, I have evidence of it in antiquity, giving their pathology. Let's just assume that's the case. What kind of models of the phenomenon would destroy religion? It would be extraterrestrial, right? And it wouldn't be an HI, because even in the text, right, there are non-human intelligences all throughout the Bible and in every Abrahamic religion. Even non-Abrahamic religions, right? They have an HI. So that wouldn't be it, right? So what would it be? What would be so utterly shocking ontologically that they shut the door on all the archive they have, threw away the key, and maybe you'll be filled in a skiff about what's going on. And even then, if you're a one-term president, goodbye. Because whatever they have behind closed doors would not just destroy religion. It would call into question free will. It would call into question our reality, who's in charge of it, what's actually going on. It would be along the lines, and this gets back into Richard Banderich's research, right, where something, and I love this reference, because I'm a big movie buff, but, you know, when these metamaterials are falling out of the sky and they resemble the environment, they blend into the environment they're in. They're designed to hide in plain sight. It's like the Truman Show.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And that's what I think they're doing. I think they know that we're in a construct and that there are certain things that are done to us and for us that we're not in control of. But yeah, it's a Truman Show, right? When Truman's out there on the boat and all of a sudden one of the stage lights falls out in the water. That should not happen. Yeah. And so again, if we're looking at this through the lens of the simulation model or even the construct, yeah, maybe that's not the metamaterial.
Well, this is where I wanted to go with the exploration of how deep this rabbit hole goes as it relates to the nature of this human experience, why we're here, and what these beings are. There's been a resurgence of Gnostic beliefs because people have started to become aware that the nature of our systems are extremely anti-human. And there's a lot of agendas and ideologies and technology that reflect those anti-human ideologies. But it's not just that. People look at things like we're talking about tonight, the strange connections between ufology and the paranormal, how these beings can take over perception, and they question the nature of reality. Something else I wanted to get your thoughts on. I don't know if you've heard the Danny Goler DMT experiments, where the gentleman is shining the laser, he sees code. Now, the code reminds me of sigils. The sigils that you were mentioning earlier. Now, I'll put all of this together, and you could get to a point where you believe that we are in, like you said, a construct that may be controlled, or at least these beings have free reign or sanctioned to control this realm.
Oh, man, that gets to the deepest and darkest research being done right now. So this is, if somebody asks me, okay, Nathaniel, what exactly is your model of a phenomenon, right? And in my inadequacies, my ADHD, a lot of times I don't really make that plain in interviews, because I'm looking at all the data points, trying to paint the picture best I can, present the evidence, and let the audience make their decisions. But it does appear to me that there is a species that is either in control of our reality or is fighting for control over our reality. They are not, again, there is some kind of deficiency present, because if you have to materialize an object to anchor yourself to it, there's something going on there, right? It's not like, okay, you're an omnipotent species. Right. You're omniscient. Right? There is some form of disability present to where they have to facilitate their need with technology. But if you look at the scientific method given to us by these beings, it's exactly what they're doing. It's exactly what we're doing, right? You have a practitioner of the occult, like, okay, Jack Parsons. What does he want to do? He wants to further a scientific method. How does he do it? He does it through esotericism. So the correct model, again, and people get caught up in this. Well, if they're demons, why do they need spaceships? Well, okay, guys, if they're aliens, why do they need altars? So somewhere in between those models, right? Not to be a chump here, guys, but let's be real here. Somewhere in the middle of both models, you have a more correct understanding of what we may be dealing with. Now, this gets back into some of the older concepts of occultists, where even Paracelsus, where he talks about the idea that there could be practitioners that had performed so many rituals to conjure these beings that at one point they take on the characteristics of the beings they're conjuring, to where they stop being just a practitioner. Something changes within them. And this concept is one of the oldest ideas found in the Bible. Even Davis is fascinating. He's talking about idols. Again, these beings possessed idols before they possessed people. And then they, hybridize with our species to possess us. Well, David's talking about idolaters. He's like, okay, listen, you're creating an image. You're creating an image for these beings to inhabit. But within the statue, you have the entity itself, right? So you have the statue, and then you have the entity within. And this is, okay, those who worship them, both the entity and the statue, will become like them. Why? This is fascinating. Number one, your corpse will have eyes that can't see. You'll be dead just like they are. But that's just the avatar. But you'll also be likened to them because you'll need an body to inhabit. You will need a body to inhabit like them. So those who worship them will become like them, is what he said. And this gets back to some heavy, dark stuff. But that's why in some of the grimoires, you do have evidence. Even the Testament of Solomon, if people consider that valid, which there are arguments on both sides, not that it was Solomon that wrote it, but it's somebody that's performing rituals, encountered an individual who was a deceased practitioner. He's like, oh yeah, I joined the ranks. How? Because I took on the characteristics of the beings I was conjuring. Now, this is imperative, this is powerful, because there are data to suggest that a lot of manifestations we're seeing in the sky is merely product placement on the part of these beings, by the way, right? Like Matthew Roberts witnessed one of these UAPs in the sky, and when he went home, a voice came to him and started giving him occult writings, gave him the list of books to read, gave him the list of authors. He was visited by a succubus entity. The next day, he was almost throwing his guts up. He said, throwing up rather, because he realized something really bad happened to him without his consent. And then the phenomenon convinced him that what had happened to him was an initiatory practice. He was now initiated. Into what?
Yeah.
Not a fraternity. What are we dealing with here? So this gets back to even Matthew Brown's interview on Weaponize, where he's talking to them, and he's talking about how, okay, look, here's what I can tell you, and here's what I can tell you because I know it's true, right? Is that we live in a construct. Mm-hmm. What? Yeah, and there are others who've made it out. What? So we on the outside, using open source intelligence, civilians, we may be thinking that, okay, yeah, it's possible we live in a construct, and maybe one day in 100, 200,000 years, we'll understand what it is. I think our government's much further along than that. Much further along. Even, matter of fact, Matthew Brown, after that initial interview with Weaponized, Corbell and Knapp, he went on his X account and started talking about Enochian magic.
Right, yes. I remember those posts.
Absolutely, yeah. Right? What are we dealing with? Again, and you take it all into consideration, my friend, and you sit down with the question and say, so we're sigilizing rockets. We had the leader of the free world in a circle without his permission, his knowledge and consent. Look this way while we launch this rocket into space. Well, why are you guys doing this to the leader of the free world? He's a leader of the free world. Well, we're doing this to honor our sponsors. Yeah. You're not honoring them. That's a little conservative for me. Let's be more accurate. You performed a ritual, included this man in it. Who are you trying to appeal to? And so this is why, again, that when you look at everything, it's consistent, more consistent with the fallen angel hypothesis. However, there's a caveat. It's far darker, far deeper, far more real. There's technology involved. And it's not just fighting for souls, it's fighting for reality. And it has again, stretch the model larger, stretch it. That is where we'll start to see the mask slip. It goes back to the sigils that we're finding on experiences. One of these sigils I found on the remote viewer, one of my case studies, he was out of his body, met these entities, and when he was thrown back into his body from underneath the surface to the skin, and there were multiple times, by the way, not just one time this happened. He had these symbols, and one of them was an overarching Egyptian hieroglyphic accompanied by other religious artifacts. And so in my research, I'm going through the grimoires I have behind me and going through different books. And finally, I found the Book of Abramelin. And in it, again, it's about a man who travels the whole planet looking at various esoteric traditions. Wondering, okay, like, I want to learn, I want to transcend, I want to evolve. Is this beneficial? And two things happened. It's fascinating. He met a guy who was an Albigensian anthropologist. And he's talking to him. He goes, yeah. He goes, this anthropologist said, I have also, I'm a world traveler. He said, but he said, I had been looking for like 25 years, looking for different ingredients to a potion that I found. It's a very ancient potion needed to facilitate a ritual. He's like, it took me long, like most of my life to find all of the ingredients because they were stretched all across the world. He said, I mixed them up according to the recipe and I ingested it. He said, the next thing I know, I'm interfacing with an entity. And the entity calls me by name and says, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. That's fascinating, number one. Number two, in the Book of Brahman, this individual runs into a species of practitioners whose magic had transcended everything. And, some of it mirrored earthly magic, but whatever they were doing was on another level. And it had to do with a lot of Egyptian hieroglyphics and symbols. And so even when he met a Brahmin was like, I don't touch that, right? There's something else out there that, sure, it can be quantified as fallen angels, but that's not enough. That falls very short of really characterizing what we're dealing with. And so my point here for everybody is, yeah, there is a there. And it is sometimes frustrating to me when people say, okay, we'll just call it demonic. That doesn't really matter. Put the moniker on. Doesn't really touch what we're dealing with. It's something deeper, right? It's something, again, that's not just after souls, it's after reality itself. And it believes it has a shot.
Now, because this is so deep and the possibilities get very dark, I have to ask you, do you believe that there is a benevolent force out there that may be attempting to counter this?
Yes, I do. Dr. Turner had actually appealed to the kind gentility of benevolence. One evening, she kept getting abducted in her dreams and nightmares, and she's being taken, and bad things are happening to her. So finally, she prayed, or she verbally articulated a desire for assistance, hopefully hoping that they would intervene on her part. Well, anyways, she said that she goes to bed like she usually did, and one of these dreams take place. She's like, but it was a dream. She's like, but it wasn't a dream. She goes, because I remember sitting down on a chair and feeling it around me. I could feel it. It was as if I was there physically, but it was a dream. And in front of her, there was kind of like a Supreme Court scenario, right? Where you have a bunch of, like, maybe 6 or 7 people lined up in front of you, and they're behind this desk and everything. And she said, I couldn't see their faces, but they called me by name, Dr. Turner. You have asked us to intervene. You want to know what's going on. And they kept replaying a scene from the Bible where one brother is trying to take the birthright of the other. And so what he does, he dons, right, camel hair, I believe it was, or something, puts it on his body because his brother was a hairy man. He goes to the father, right? Are you so-and-so? Yes. Okay. Give me the birthright. And so he gets the birthright. It's, I think it's Jacob Esau. I believe it's Jacob Esau. But anyways, I know it was. My point is, they kept replaying the scene over and over and over again, like on a TV screen for her, like a theater. And they'd ask her, they'd stop it. Dr. Turner, do you know what we're trying to tell you? No, I don't understand. What is this? When they replay it again, they did it multiple times until finally they just kind of got fed up. It was like, okay, look, what we're trying to tell you, right? What we're trying to tell you is Earth belongs to you. But there is another species, this is crazy, by the way, that in order to take the Earth from you, is trying to blend in with your species by virtue of, and this is my research, by virtue of parasitic mimicry, blending into our environment. Hello,
Yeah.
right? And right, replicating our world. It's trying to hijack it and take it from us. That's when she returned to her body and started, performing her research even more. But I think that's what we're dealing with, and that's why, people like to pigeonhole me. Do you believe it's alien? No, I don't. Alien to us, to a degree, obviously. But the fallen angel hypothesis, at least their pathology, fits this to a T, except it needs to be deeper and broader, and we need to reconsider what they really believe the fallen angel was, right? And beyond just the borrowed loan words we find in biblical antiquity. What were they? And this gets back into mutated ghosts and mutated consciousness, where, like, even if you get into the Rephaim, you get into Raphael. Rapha is the term, means to heal. And one of the earliest theories in antiquity was that some of these beings were former exorcists that had betrayed their call. And again, by virtue, this is crazy, but what they were used to doing, was removing a spirit out of people. But in doing that, they came in contact with the darkness, molded by it, groomed by it. Now they became experts in implanting the spirit within people, not taking them out. And so you have that Rephaim aspect of it. And then you get into the Rephaim and the Repiuma in Ugaritic literature, where they also point to the fact, again, they're all seeing it from their own perspectives, all different characteristics, same species, right? Same species. So different strokes of paint, but it's the same painting. And so where one person said, okay, yeah, these appear to have expertise over ritual magic. Then the flip side, you have the Repiuma in Ugaritic literature, who were deceased ancestors. What are we looking at? And then you have the Malakuma in Ugaritic literature, found in ritual bowls. These were prayed to. Right? They were prayed to. And these Malakuma were believed to have been disembodied consciousness that had evolved into something else. It's formerly human, but it evolved into something else. So the soul itself was a different species in the body it inhabited. And so the body dies, the soul evolves or it mutates.
Wow.
And so if you compile all of these themes together, then you go to the New Testament when Peter is believed to have been martyred. His family's grieving in the house. Peter, flesh and blood Peter, comes and knocks on the door. They look through the peephole, and in the Bible it says they thought it was Peter's angel. Why? Because it looked like Peter. What they were leaning on is that ancient idea that was the consciousness of Peter. And so you compile all these theories together, and what you get again is a species of the dead undead that perhaps is disembodied, that can materialize to the touch, that seeks to be worshipped, and guess what? Also performs ritual magic.
That is absolutely crazy.
That's a lot.
That is, but it's super important to explore this stuff. To close out, are there any known weapons or defense against these?
Well, iron, raw iron. It's everywhere in the literature, and it's all across the world, interreligious and cross-cultural. I am going to say this. There's research being done by Steve Mayer right now, and that he's going to be bringing out the scientific aspect of it. And it's his research, so I'm not going to, you guys are going to have to watch the stuff. Most likely it'll be on the NHI discussions that he and I are having on his channel. But he comes out with a scientific reason as to why iron messes with the construct, to where we know that when some of these beings manifest, they have a difficult time holding their form. Right. So again, they're not omnipotent, they're not omniscient. When they enter the construct, there are limitations to them. Sometimes they cannot hold their form for longer than 5-10 minutes. So whatever they do, they have to do it very quickly, or there's a glitch in the matrix. The program fails, and you'll see through it, and then good luck. So that's something that he's going to be bringing out here soon, probably today or tomorrow, to look for that. And but yeah, that's where we are in the research. And again, I'm not saying I know everything. If anything, I have questions, but there are more models. Or I guess there are models that make more sense than others. And the model that makes the least sense, even to Jacques Vallée, is that these are some kind of extraterrestrial entities.
Well, it does give me hope whenever you say that they do have limited influence over this realm, and there may be something that we can fight against them with. They are not, like you said, all-powerful beings in control of this reality, it seems. So that should give people a little glimmer of hope when it comes to the nature of reality. Nathaniel, this is great information. Thank you again. Before we let you go, remind the audience how they can find out more about you.
So you can follow me on Instagram. You can subscribe to my YouTube page, my YouTube channel, under my name, Nathaniel Gillis. And if you would so choose, you could sign up, go to parasymposia.com and sign up for early access to my upcoming paranormal platform. I'm going to be releasing my lecture series on necronetics, preternatural epiphenomenal philosophy, which is the foundation of necronetics. And you guys will have access to that. And that's how you guys can follow me. Thanks for having me on, brother. It's always a pleasure,
Excellent.
man. Thank you.
We'll definitely be doing this again. Until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow.